Hello and welcome to Direct Approach with Wayne Moorehead, an exclusive podcast by DSN where Wayne shares candid and insightful conversations with leading corporate executives about today's evolving direct sales channel. Tune in every other Thursday for timely insights and relevant takeaways to grow and advance your business. In today's episode, Wayne is joined by billion-dollar brand builder and President of Prüvit, Blake Mallen. Blake was one of the top-ranked speakers at the Fall 2022 DSU event for his insightful presentation focused on cracking the Amazon code. In this episode, Blake talks about 10 disruptive innovations and trends currently driving opportunity for direct selling companies. This is a thought-provoking and forward-looking episode with lessons and learnings perfectly timed to take into the new year. And if you want to learn even more about staying current in the changing environment, register to join us in person for the annual DSN Global Celebration, known as the Oscars of Direct Selling, and DSU events taking place Tuesday, April 18th through Thursday, April 20th at the Omni Frisco Hotel in Frisco, Texas. DSU is a direct selling 2-day masterclass with a TED-style show flow featuring 25 plus subject matter experts and executive leaders sharing their insights and learnings for the greater good of the entire channel. Registration is now open at dsu2023.com and is free to all active corporate direct selling executives and event sponsors. We hope you save the dates now, register, and join us in April for these phenomenal events. This episode's sponsors are Nexio and InfoTrax. Nexio was purpose-built to solve the payment problems direct sellers face. Their unified platform simplifies the complexity of the payments industry and helps you design forward-thinking strategies. Nexio empowers you to take control of commerce strategy, orchestrate payouts to distributors, optimize your transactions to grow your revenue, and maintain the flexibility to overcome obstacles in the ever-changing world of payments. Learn more at nex.io. That is nex.io. And when rapid growth or international expansion place demands on your business your systems aren't prepared to handle, success itself can be a potential cause of failure. As you grow, your system's requirements change, and nothing is worse than being hard-coded into a corner. The InfoTrax platform was built with growth in mind, allowing the freedom to adjust your system at any time to align with your current business needs. Learn more at infotraxsys.com. That is infotraxsys.com. And now, please help me welcome your host, Wayne Moorehead, and today's guest, billion-dollar brand builder and President of Prüvit, Blake Mallen.
Hello and welcome to another episode of DSN's Direct Approach podcast. As always, I'm your host, Wayne Moorehead. And today we have a conversation that I've really been looking forward to the past 2 or 3 months when we first got it on the lineup. And I love each and every one of these, but today is especially interesting and exciting for me because it's someone that over the last 15 years I've watched and learned so much from. Been fortunate to have this individual become a great friend along the way. He's had a tremendous amount of success in direct selling over the last 20 years as a founder, an advisor, speaker, investor, field leader, podcast host. He has amazing content that he posts every week. And now for the last few years, President of Prüvit. I'm talking about none other than Mr. Blake Mallen. Blake, thanks for being here.
I'm so excited for today's conversation, Wayne. We have been talking about this one for a little while, so excited we get to. It's going to be fun. Well, first and foremost, I appreciate the kind words. It's been fun to watch what you've created, and this podcast has been awesome. I'm a listener. I'm a fan. You've had some awesome conversations. I love what you're doing with Direct Approach and what DSN is doing to kind of bring this format to the channel and executives and leaders like myself. It helps tremendously. So just thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you're doing. And I'm excited to be here.
It goes without saying that we're in a very unique time in direct selling. Change has been a constant for us. We've been around, the channel and the business model for way more than 100 years now. And we've been really good at evolving to the unique needs of the time, whenever they are. But we are experiencing something different right now. This evolution, this change feels different from times past, at least that I've seen in the last 20 years. This is not kind of that slow change, that slow evolution of the past. We're seeing a pretty incredible intensity and speed around this change. And I know that's true for lots of channels and lots of business models, where I think this intensity is probably better described as a time of disruption than a time of change. And to many that can sound ominous. The word disruption can have some negative connotations. But one of the things I love, again, is you put this positive lens, you look at it through a very positive lens. You see the opportunity, you see the excitement that comes through these disruptions, these shifts, these opportunities. And I thought it was so insightful that you've been talking about this. You talked about it at DSU. I recently listened to kind of a live stream that you were doing to your own audience, to your own community, about kind of these disruptions that are taking place right now and what you're seeing and what the opportunities are and how we can leverage them to our benefits. And so I really wanted to kind of discuss that here and get all of us, this direct selling community, to be able to hear these disruptions, these shifts, these opportunities that you've been talking about. And you were gracious enough to come on and be willing to share them. So I'd love to kind of go through and, I might kind of tee these up, but I'm really interested to have you kind of describe to all of us, to the audience, to myself, what these changes are and where you see these opportunities. So with that said, you ready to jump in?
Yeah, it's a loaded question, for
great.
Sure. I love the word, right? So disruption, it is what's happening. It's happening everywhere. It's not just within our channel, right? We're in a unique time in the world right now. And I don't know why. Obviously, going through pandemic and everything we experienced and now the consequences and aftermath of that is a part of an environment that's allowing for disruption. But it's not just that. I think that was an accelerator, right? It was an accelerator for everything that was happening. But for these type of periods, I do see it as opportunity. Whenever there's disruption happening, there is opportunity. Now, you have to be on the right side of the disruption, right? To use the analogy, you want to be, Henry Ford in the Model T, not the horse and buggy, or a more current analogy, you want to be Tesla right now, not creating diesel engines, right? You want to be on the side of the disruption. You want to be Netflix. You don't want to be Blockbuster, right? You want to be Amazon. You don't want to be the bookstore at the neighborhood at the end of the street. Right, we all know the analogies of disruptors. And when you're on the side of the disruption, it is massive opportunity for us as entrepreneurs and brands and company leaders. And the net outcome of disruption, in my opinion, always is a better value to the consumer. So if you think about what is disruption, well, disruption is finding a new and better way. It's stopping the way things have been done just because they've been done that way and rethinking and reinventing and innovating in something that is new and better so much that it obsoletes what had been done up until that point. That is disruption. And so the net outcome of that always to all of us, because we're all consumers, right, is we get the value, the benefit of better, right, of better. So I do see disruption as a positive time for all of us, right? Because we get to move toward a better, more effective, more efficient way. But it also means that we better be smart as brands, as companies, as leaders, to make sure we are leading our community on the side of the disruption and not to be stuck as Blockbuster, right? Or the horse and buggy. So I do think it's important.
The first one you mentioned is around channel consolidation. And, the lines between channels, how we purchased products as consumers used to be very bright. And now the bright lines that separated channels today, how we shop, they're really gone. They're essentially completely gone. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about this disruption you're seeing around channel consolidation.
Yeah, and this has been kind of a buzzword, right, in the executive circles, Wayne, and you know this, right? You were on stage even talking about it at the last event. So to simplify, well, what's the point of a company or a business? It's to get a product, a service, an idea, right, to a consumer in an effective way. At the end of the day, that's what we're in business for. So there's always been different lanes or different strategies to do that. And to your point, it wasn't that long ago where you picked a lane, you stuck in the lane, that was your only lane, and that was the lane forever. And that just is gone. Like it's gone. Even within the, I guess what we're calling direct selling channel, we have our own identity crisis. Like we don't even know what to call ourselves. What do we call our channel? Everybody got tired of direct selling, network marketing. The whole MLM got so much negative energy and negative connotation around it. Everybody just ran from that term and made up their own terms. We're social selling, we're social commerce, right? We are community, based marketing. We are referral marketing, we are affiliate marketing. They're all the same thing, right? So there's this bucket of, I guess, what we'll call the direct selling channel, even though now it doesn't even have a consistent name. It's all based on word of mouth referral, incentivizing people we know, like, and trust to bring products to the world. That now is interfacing with traditional D2C, direct to consumer, because as with the rise of social media, the rise of online buying, now we have the majority of shopping happening online in general as consumers, a trend that's continuing to grow. Those companies are now realizing that, referral is an effective form of marketing. So now you got the direct-to-consumer brands realizing, maybe if we get influencer marketing strategies and influencers, which is just another way of incentivizing referrals, what we've always done online, bleeding into one-tier referral programs, refer a friend and family programs, two-tier referral programs, they're the same. So, you got the traditional direct selling channel kind of moving toward the direct-to-consumer. You got the direct-to-consumer now taking on things that really look and act and feel like the direct, selling channel. And then you got retail that's losing consumers because everybody's buying everything online. So they realize that people want to buy things on retail that they've seen online or got referred by a friend. So you got retail brands investing in these channels. And you guys, this is just super evident if you just pay attention to all of the acquisitions that are happening. You got huge mainstream transitional brands buying multiple channels, consolidating multiple channels, where now it's not about just one lane to get your idea to a consumer. That one lane is now a 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 lane highway, right? That is all in alignment. It's got to be in alignment, right? All bringing ideas to the world. So it's happening. It's happening at a feverish rate. It's going to continue to happen, in my opinion. I'm a part of that, Wayne, right? With Prüvit, obviously, we're the ketone conversation, right? We are a community-based marketing. We're passionate about, entrepreneurs and growing people. That's why we do what we do. But now we're a part of the intelligent foods umbrella, right? The intelligent food, umbrella that now acquired Sunbasket, right? A multi-$100 million, huge brand in the meal delivery. I think it just became public that just made another acquisition with Gobble. Just acquired Gobble, which in itself, Forbes just released the headline, covered it. It was a 9-figure deal. This is public information as of this week. So, I'm a part of the consolidation. Like we have a part of in our house, we have direct-to-consumer food acquisitions happening within, Prüvit in our community. We've had an effective Amazon strategy for years now that our community loves and supports because it protects our community and adds additional upside in the D2C space. So I'm a part of it. It's happening. We're seeing it. And I think more at a macro level, it's just, I don't know what to call it. I don't know what it'll be called, but I do know it's all being thrown in one bucket and it's all emerging as kind of one thing. And, I think you got to figure out as a company leader and as a leader of an organization, how and what your strategy is to align with this trend, because it's definitely a trend.
Oh, it's absolutely a trend. And it's certainly here to stay. And it's here to stay. And it's interesting that you talk about, how to even define that. It's, I've heard everyone from Kevin Gass to Russ Fletcher mention the same thing, that we're all kind of grasping and struggling of how to even define ourselves, and not just from a kind of lexicon or verbal definition, but as we look across the landscape and across channels, how do we even identify kind of who is part of this organization and part of this tribe? Because so many of the practices now are combining. And I want to echo what you said around Amazon. I think you and Prüvit and Brian have done an amazing job of really showing the channel how they can effectively extend into some of these other channels that 5 years ago would have been classified as channel conflict or competitive. But you've really done it in a way where your leaders, your field, your consumers understand that this is how we all shop now, that we can't create kind of these artificial walls between how we shop. We need to be where consumers are. We need to shop the same way. And so again, I think you personally, Brian and Prüvit have done an amazing job of helping show us that, hey, we can do this, that it is time that our distributors and customers are ready for us to kind of enter and do business and kind of a little bit different way than we have in the past traditionally.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I know for everybody that was an executive or an owner at the last DSU event, you heard me harp on Amazon. So I won't make this an Amazon conversation, but it just stating the obvious that that's where the consumer is, right? It's the third largest search engine. It's the most trusted in the world. It's where everybody goes, every consumer, to see ratings and reviews to decide if they're going to buy. You know, you got 50% almost of all online buying in the US happening on that platform. And you got 63% of consumers starting searches for what they're looking for there. To ignore that would be completely putting blinders on where the consumer's at today. So, yeah, I did a DSN. The team asked me to kind of just open the kimono, so to speak, and just give a transparent strategy of exactly what we do, which I gave it the DSU event. And I guess they got so many questions and feedback from it, they actually made that publicly available. So if you guys are interested in that piece, I think DSU published it on their website or blog, did some articles on it. You can literally watch it. But we give the play-by-play of exactly what we do with Prüvit. That's been super successful. And I think it's a no-brainer for any product brand in this space. And it tells you the right way to do it in alignment with your community. So it's really a win for all. So that's the first place to start if you haven't started there.
No, absolutely. And it was really compelling and really, really helpful for the majority of the channel that's not participating. And again, not to harp too much or go too hard onto Amazon, because, you know, we did cover that in the past. But I do want to echo one of the quotes that you said that I think is really helpful. You know, as I've worked with clients and other companies, there is a real fear around what is the field's reaction going to be when we introduce this. They're going to get upset. You know, they're going to leave and maybe go somewhere else. And when you were asked how many complaints from the field that you personally or that Prüvit has received, you held up kind of the big goose egg, 0. That once explained right and introduced correctly, they're going to want their brand protected. They're going to want their brand there. So again, just the fact that you got 0 complaints should really help remove a lot of the fear that we all have of potentially upsetting the apple cart.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will qualify it. It's not just about communicating it effectively, although communication, doing it transparently, you know, telling the truth is a big part of it. But there's a strategy that has to be implemented to do it correctly, and you can do it incorrectly. And you have to have a team in place that can actually protect the brand and remove the unauthorized sellers and protect your price points and do the work in order to protect the brand, the product, therefore protecting the opportunity of your actual, you know, promoters, distributors, your community. So it does take the right strategy, it does take the right team, and it does take the right effective communication. But the good news is it's all possible now, right? 3-4 years ago, those weren't possible. Now it's possible to the point where once you just get educated, it is in my opinion, no-brainer decision for everybody, the company on behalf and for, right, the community. So enough of that. Check it out.
Oh, that's great. Yes, please go to DSN.
At DSN.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so jumping into number 2, moving into really this concept around providing real value to consumers. As you mentioned, there's kind of been a stigma in the past, so much so that we've had to shift what we even call the channel. And that's really been around setting, managing, and meeting expectations. And so can you talk a little bit about, you know, setting those expectations, meeting them as it relates to product value and utility to the customer?
Yeah, I just think right now we're in a time where you have to have real value. And we'll just put it at that. We as a company and brand have to be offering real value, right, to the consumer, which sounds silly. Like the only reason us as consumers buy anything is we believe the value we're receiving is greater than the price that we're being asked to pay. But this industry historically has been able to get away without offering for so long real value because of the promise of a financial upside, right? A vision of an economic freedom, right? The opportunity side of what we do, which used to work. I got intrigued by this industry with that conversation. Right? It worked. But I just think we've evolved beyond that, where people are just tired of the the get rich quick opportunity, money here, like we're just done with it. Like, tell me about the value you're bringing to the world through a product that really is going to change, right? Someone's life in some way. And our BS meters have gotten so fine-tuned, especially over the last couple of years. Like, the world is just done with fake news, right? Done with hyperbole, so much mistrust. Like, just give it to us straight and make sure it's real, right? So that's what I mean when I say a real product adding real value, not the opportunity first message. I think those days are done. And if you're still leading with that, I don't think you're going to get the response that you're looking for, or at least the community or clientele you want to attract. So what is the real value, and deliver it in a way that's real expectations. Like, it doesn't need to be the oversell. It doesn't need to be the, everything's great. Just be real and transparent. I think you're going to find that's going to be more and better received today. So that's what I mean, Wayne, by just kind of like real value and real expectations, both in what we're bringing to the world and how we're bringing it, right? The conversation we're wrapping around has to be real.
Absolutely. And I love that you kind of pointed out the fatigue that we all have around hype, especially the last, call it 4 years. I mean, I think we're all just kind of exhausted from it. We're looking for people to shoot straight with us. And as far as delivering value, we all know that there's a tremendous amount of work involved in succeeding on the opportunity side for our field, for distributors, that there's a direct correlation with the amount of effort that you put in with, the ultimate result or the success that you'll achieve. I love that when we focus on product and really kind of just sequence product first, it's not that the opportunity isn't important, that the balance is off. To me, it's a lot about sequencing. So when we lead with product and the value that the product provides, that product is something that can benefit everyone, where we can meet their expectations, where we can exceed their expectations and provide real value, whatever our products and services are. And yet oftentimes the focus shifts away from that. So I do think it is so important to shine the spotlight on that, because each and every person that comes in and tries the product, immediately we have the opportunity to help them and benefit them.
I love the way you said that, because you're right. And I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm a fan of entrepreneurs. I'm a believer in free enterprise. Like, I love inspiring and watching people grow. You're right. It's the sequencing. I had a unique conversation with a gentleman named Dan Gilbert. Some of you guys might know the name. He was the founder, CEO of Quicken, right? A really big empire there. He owns the Cavs, Cleveland Cavaliers. He's doing amazing things, revitalizing downtown Detroit. He's a rock star, just aspiring entrepreneur. And I had a unique opportunity to have a conversation with his kind of internal team in his offices there. And I remember something he said, Blake, money doesn't lead, it follows. And that was something that they had in their culture. Money doesn't lead, it follows. And in this business, money doesn't lead, it follows. If you create value for a consumer and an impact for people, right, the money can and will come as a response, right, of the impact that you're making, right? So I always say, focus on the impact, you'll get the income. Money doesn't lead, it follows. And then from a marketing lens, it is the more mainstream conversation when it comes to leading with the product, which I guess will lead into kind of maybe the next disruption, sure, if you want to call it. I think when we're talking about bringing products to the world, we have to realize that there has to be a velocity of innovation today that is faster than it's ever been before. And it goes to, Wayne, just our shrinking attention spans. Like, we all know social media is shrinking all of our attention spans, right? I mean, we're watching it like every year, our attention spans get shorter. The videos are getting shorter. Our post links are getting shorter, because that has ramifications and effects, right? The shortening attention spans also applies to our consumers, which means our consumers are now, subconsciously craving more variety and shorter, cadences of launches. Like, I've been in the nutrition space over 15 years. I can remember when we had 18-month, a year and a half launch cycles from a product idea to when it hit the market would take us a year and a half. I could not imagine trying to operate today with a year. The whole world can change in a year and a half today, let alone, your marketing message. So we have to now collapse our cadence, right, of launches, or our speed of innovations. It's not about yearly rollouts, because I think it's about monthly innovation. And now, again, don't misunderstand me. It doesn't mean to be your new blockbuster, huge launch every month, but there needs to be innovation. That could be, a new flavor, right? An adjustment, a revamping of a brand, an addition of a bundle, an interesting campaign idea. I do think, Wayne, it's one of the things that Brian and Prüvit just were early adopters, like way before I was with the team, on cracking the code of this. The ability, we use flavors, right? We introduce new flavors monthly. We introduce new technology almost every 45 days. We keep up that cadence all year, every year. Most people hearing that would probably have a heart attack or think we're crazy. But it allows us to always create a new conversation, have something to grab attention, have something new and exciting for our community to talk about, give our consumer a variety, helps with their lifetime value, helps with them staying within the community. People just don't get bored if you give them something new. Now, here's a big disclaimer, because I know some of you that are experienced in the space, you also know that too much too fast can also create confusion, can also add complexity. Confusion and complexity are the absolute enemy of momentum and inertia in this type of business. So you got to find a way. It's a paradox, right? It's a dichotomy. You got to find a way to have constant innovation at a rapid pace, but still keeping the main thing, keeping your focus. So you're not, right, creating confusion. And there's an art to that, right? We use flavors, we use seasonals, but we always keep the conversation, the core of our ketone conversation, the main thing. So we have both the simplicity and the variety. But you got to figure out a way, I think, in the space to meet the consumer where they're at today, which is new, innovation, velocity, right? In order to give people the variety they're looking for. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, you've been around, you've seen all of this.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of pretty important things there. And one of the things that came to mind, you were talking about the velocity of innovation. Of course, it has to be really, really frequent now. And you did master that. I think Prüvit's done an amazing job. I think Red Aspen's another one that's done a really incredible job with weekly product launches. My hat's off to that product team there that's able to deal with just the flow of information, the communications that go along with that. And you touched on another really important thing, not just the velocity of innovation, but the degree of innovation. It doesn't always have to be a new category, a new opportunity, something, where you've stretched the brand really far to take it there. It's, as you mentioned, it's the flavors. It can be colors. It can be, more of these incremental innovations that allow you to move really quickly, test concepts, get consumer feedback. And it's important that they're more incremental the quicker you go, because again, I think we've all been in companies in the past where you talked about that 18-month, product development cycle, and we would secretly launch something, we would keep it secret for 18 months and unveil it at convention. And so many times it was in a completely different category. So then the distributors have to understand how to incorporate that into their business model, into their duplication model, into their communications. And so I felt like, looking back, we, every 18 months, we would just spin them around and leave them facing a new direction. And so to your point of keeping the main thing, these incremental innovations are there to help create excitement, but also to reinforce your positioning, to support and, clarify and double down on maybe who you already are. Occasionally, these bigger, more disruptive innovations might be a category jump or something. But when you're moving so quickly, having these incremental innovations that just completely reinforce who you are lets the field move really quickly. And so again, I just kind of echoing a lot of your points, but I think there were so many valuable lessons in there in what you said.
Yeah, notice the main thing we keep focused on, even in these first couple of disruptions, it's all about the consumer. Right. So if I were to go into maybe number 4,
please.
I think it's a consumer experience is what matters most. And again, I know that sounds silly because like a normal business, it's the only thing that matters. But in our world, we had to make the shift a while back where we're going to actually focus on customers now. Like I remember that shift. And now it's not just about being, customer focused, the conversation amongst kind of the direct selling, executive world is like, no, you got to be customer obsessed. So we got to think about what that means as a consumer, right, of our product, of our brand. And it's got to be a real thing from how we're learning or they're learning about your conversation to how they're buying. I mean, Amazon, again, has changed the expectation that consumers have on a shopping experience with their, one click and I'm out. Like, we got to get as close to that as possible, because that's not a nice to have. That is today's expectation of a consumer, right? So everything from the technology we use to the onboarding to the experience, I think we always have to have a lens of what experience are we creating for our actual consumer, not just our promoter, but our consumer. But I guess maybe we transition away. Let's go. We've talked a lot about the consumer side, like disruptions in the consumer side. I think if I were to go to the next one on my mind, and this is I
may jump in on one thing here, if that's okay.
Yeah, do it.
I just want to reinforce that I do think that we've all, and I'm guilty as charged. We've kind of paid lip service to this in the past. We know how easy it is, as you mentioned, one-click shopping from Amazon. Our technology, the way people shop, the way people enroll, the way people engage with us is fairly clunky. It's not easy to do business with a lot of our companies. If we were honest with ourselves, and in the past, because we knew that there was an opportunity attached to it, that, this was at the time the only way for people to get the products, that we felt like, well, you know what, these consumers are willing to kind of put up with some of the friction, in a purchase process, in an enrollment process. Those days are gone. Those days are absolutely gone. People are going to bounce. We're going to lose so much potential incremental sales. And I just want to reinforce, especially on the technology, the systems, the processes standpoint, we have to be just as easy to do business with as someone else that, can turn on an app and start driving a car and making money. So, I'm pointing the finger at me as well, but there's a lot that we all need to do to really become more customer obsessed, to not just hire somebody and give them a CX title and say, go map out the customer journey. Thank you very much. Here's a couple promotions along the way. But we really need to re-engineer so much in our business to just remove the friction and make it consumer friendly. So I jumped off my soapbox. Sorry, keep going.
No, please chime in. I value your perspective, and you, to many regards, through this podcast, who you are and your relationship with DSN, obviously have a larger view even than I have, right, as an operator. So I agree, and it is. So we could spend all day just on tech.
Hey, yes,
it's not.
Apologies.
It's not. Yeah, it's not nice. Mobile is not nice to have. It's the only thing that matters. Everybody is on their phone, right? Checking out in commerce, people expect, right, ease. If not, they're not going to do business. People need ease and simplicity, or they aren't going to buy from your brand. And then the experience has to be focused on the consumer. So often we get over-focused on our leadership, right, which are important. Right? I'm not saying they're not, or our promoter. They're are vital. Important. They are the livelihood and blood of our communities. But at the end of the day, it's that consumer experience that makes all that possible, right? So absolutely. I think that's the disruption. And if you pay attention, you're able to just experience and witness real time the disruption that's really happening. And this next one it's a big shift.
Yeah, number 5, company as a platform.
Companies today are becoming much more of a platform. And what I mean by that, it's an evolution of social media, right, has given anybody who wants a microphone to the world. And we've seen, right, the power of what can happen from a single tweet, right, a single viral video. The right person, the right personality, the right mission, the right message can reach the world. And that reach has now led to this obvious, right, surgence of personal branding, which I love, where you're seeing people, personalities, becoming brands. You, right, are the brand. You and your personality can be a brand that in many cases can actually transcend the reach and impressions and eyeballs of even many of the product brands we know and love. So we're seeing this shift where personal brands of our community leaders, our field leaders, our activator personalities that are leading our communities, guys, they are brands. And in many cases, their brands have more reach than even maybe the company corporate brand.
Millions of followers. You have some that have millions of followers there in your company.
Millions. And I think most companies probably have people that are the same. I'll use an analogy, Wayne. So I'm here next to Hollywood. I'm not in Hollywood. I'm outside Hollywood, but right over that hill, right over there is Hollywood. I don't know if you guys caught the halftime Super Bowl show this last Super Bowl. Like we loved it all the way from Hollywood, but it was the Jay-Z crew. And you don't have to be a hip hop lover, right, to love what they're doing. But I'll use the analogy like Jay-Z was an artist. Like he put out a certain type of music. He could have been a very successful artist, but Jay-Z realized that Eminem had a different style, would reach different people. Right. And the next, talent had a different message that could reach different people. And the next talent, 50 Cent, right, or Mary J. Blige, had enough talent. So he became a record label. And that shift from artist to record label, right, allowed him to build a series of brands under a house that now reached way more people than just his music would have ever reached. Now, I'm not talking about Jay-Z or hip hop or even music. That analogy of a record label, because that's powerful. That's what we as companies should become. It's not about the one message of the corporate brand that's only going to resonate with a certain subset. We're now a platform that can raise up the power of different personalities, give them the platform to amplify their passion and voice. And the collection of all of those platforms, the collection of all of those artists, the different music, right? The country plus the hip hop plus the pop, right? Plus the clat, all of it united around a mission and a value system and a movement can reach way more people than any single brand will ever reach. To use marketing corp speak jargon, we used to talk about being a branded house to becoming a house of brands. But this concept now goes from like a house of brands. I don't even know what analogy you want to use. We're like the skyscraper of never ending of brands, if you're willing to support it as a company. But a lot of companies are afraid. They're afraid of their leadership getting too powerful. Why? They're the ones that bring our message to the world. Our job is to lift them up, create a platform where they can reach as many as possible, and then get as many of them through different messages, right, that we can to align with our mission to reach even more audiences. You guys, that shift is huge, but it requires a different approach, right? It requires not opting from scarcity or fear. It requires putting systems in place to elevate these individuals, right? And it's not about finding, hear me on this. I've heard this conversation for years. It's not about finding the influencers. Guys, someone comes for a bonus or comes for a paycheck, they leave for a bonus or leave for a paycheck, right? If they come for a short-term win, they're gone as fast as they came in. Don't misunderstand me if you're an influencer out there and you love your brand. That's not a global statement. I know there's differences, but in my experience, that is the usual case. But you can create influencers. You can develop influencers. You can teach marketing. You can teach branding. You can teach social selling. And you take a true fan that's here for the right reasons and you teach them how to amplify who they are through a worldwide microphone called social media today. You have something powerful and something that really has no limit to scale. So I think, Wayne, that's a big shift on what's happening, and it is take a different approach, right? But it's totally different than where we were in terms of a record label concept. I know you're seeing that across the board.
Absolutely. I think the record label analogy, I hadn't heard that prior to you. So again, all credit goes to you on this one. I do think it's pretty incredible. It is accurate. And if you look at it historically, we used to bring the field distributors into our world, the world of our brand, and allow them to tell our story, allow them to go out, and share our story. And today they're bringing us into their world. They're taking our brands and pulling them into their existing brand, their existing reach, their existing community. And we're there to help them tell their stories as well. Again, even recently working with a company, it's something as simple as video scripting. And we were in a conference room and it was like, well, our company does this. We do this. We do this. We've got the best this, our technology this. And I just raised the question of, is that really the perspective we want to take? Like, are we making us the hero, or should we be making the customer, the field leader, the hero? How we meet their needs and help them kind of on their personal journey. But I do think that big shift, and you and I have talked about this, and it's probably overused at this point, but this idea of going from kind of command and control to engage and empower, I think has been an enormous shift. I'm glad you identified it, and thank you for the record label analogy. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, no, please do. I think that leads to maybe other shifts. If I were to say a quick number 6, as we identify the personalities and give them a platform to rise, there's been shifts in how you incentivize those people. The gig economy has shifted the expectation on kind of the time for money equation, right? It's too easy to start a spare time, part-time side gig, put in some time, right? Driving Uber, driving a car, delivering this, doing that, and making real spare time cash that you could use to pay your bills or create some more freedom. So that has shifted. We're definitely seeing compensation and incentives have to match personal activity, where people just through personal efforts, personal activity can make a good spare time income. So, that's a shift. And I don't want to get into like a behavioral economics or compensation plan, strategy conversation, but high level, someone's got to be able, through the value of the product, right, the platform we're talking about, bring it to a consumer and make enough income, right, where this is worth their time and their endeavor without building the team yet. And then once they start building the team and building a community, it raises their impact. But I want to jump to maybe number 7, Wayne, what you just hit on. And you said some words, and I heard you say those words on stage at an event, and I was like, that is it. So I think a big shift right now is how we choose to lead our communities. There is a shift. I'm going to use the term heart-centered leadership, because I think that's maybe what captures the spirit of a leadership style today. It's much more of a heart-centered leadership. And I will give all the credit to my business partner, Brian Underwood, on this one. I learned this, and I felt this from him when I first came to Prüvit. Because 3 years ago, I was new to the culture and the community. And it's amazing to see a culture built that is truly heart-centered. And here's what I mean by that. People can show up as they are, be welcomed as they are, have an environment of safety and freedom to actually be who they are, which I know sounds like soft, warm, and fuzzy language. But guys, when that's true, because so often we're in environments where we're actually forced to be everything but meet an expectation, act how we're supposed to, right? What will people think? But when you create an environment that actually removes a judgment, like really authentically removes a judgment, and people can show up and be who they are, that allows people to flourish and actually become everything they're meant to be. And that can only happen, in my opinion, with like a heart-centered approach. And what jogged my memory is you said command and control, because that, if we all were to be honest, that's been the leadership style, right? And command and control, and for those that aren't familiar with the term, that's a high directive, right, approach. Like, here, I'm the leader, here's the direction, here's what we're doing, and it works. Like, our military operates off command and control. Business leadership for decades, right, has operated successfully with command and control. Most organizations still operate off command and control. I think, and it's a feeling thing, I think people have just been through so much the last couple years, especially, like they've been through a lot, like pandemic times this, times that. Like, there's, mental health is now a bigger conversation that's ever been. 1 in 4 people we know are suffering. Like, people are going through stuff. So they're not looking for someone to bark at them or give them a high directive or my way is the highway or do this, or they're just not. They're over it. And they're not going to put up with it, I think.
I think that the Great Resignation is a data point of evidence.
Oh, the Great Resignation. I heard the data
that
point.
Supports that.
You're right. That. Yeah, the kind of quietly quitting movement that's happening right now. I think you're spot on. And it is a shift. So like I think it is going from how you define. I got that language from you. Kind of command and control is shifting to kind of like engage and empower. And it's engage and empower with some empathy, right? Some compassion. Like, meet people where they are, understand where they're at, right? And lift them up with the right intention. And I think that is a shift in leadership style. And I'm seeing that. I'm feeling that. Again, it's something I learned from Brian, because that has been his leadership style. That's like his heart in the Prüvit community. But I'm seeing that outside the Prüvit walls, just across the world, as a big shift when it comes to that heart-centered leadership and just more empathy, more compassion, more understanding. And it's not that needs to be like softer. I think that can create more power and get people actually to believe even more in themselves to go become what they can become. So I don't know. I don't know if you're seeing that or feeling that, but I think that's a big one.
And it gets people to commit even deeper. And I think in longer, and I agree, Brian is a great example of that leadership style. So jumping into number 8 here, you have an amazing idea around, which I hadn't really thought of it this way, but community as a currency. Can you share some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it kind of is a perfect flow based on what we were just talking about. There's nothing like having something taken away from us to restore the value that it should have. Right. And when we're put in through pandemic and forced isolation and literally the physical proximity was not possible, I think for many of us, one of the gifts coming out is maybe we realigned our value of relationships, of community, of being together, of connection. So I do think a shift that's happening, a disruption right now is community is today's currency. It's the unknown need. We know the benefits of the products we market. We know that there's financial upside, but I think we're undervaluing the community that our communities and companies bring and offer to people. Belonging, right? Safety, people to be able to have access to mentorship and growth, and just people that are positive, saying that you can do something in a world that has so much negativity and so much negative noise and so much fear-based conversation, right? A true dialogue of what is possible and positivity, and you can, might even have a bigger value at the end of the day to the people a part of our community than the dollars they make and the benefits of the products is that they use. So I do think that community is a currency of today for sure, and something we should elevate more because we have so much power in it.
Yeah, and I think that relates back to kind of the changing competitive landscape around our channels kind of blending together, because we know that not only do we have the ability to move into some of these other categories or channels like Amazon, like paid social and things like that. But as you mentioned, they're starting to come into our world and they're realizing the importance of affiliate and influencer and referral programs. And community is something that historically we have done so well and that we can really differentiate, where I don't think a lot of these other companies, call them quote unquote, potential competitors, really have an understanding of how to build and nurture and maintain a community. And so with all of that, this gets back to your point of, there's always a great opportunity, inherent in these shifts. I think that community is one that we can just do far better than anybody else.
I love that point. So, it might not just be a currency. It might be the currency for us, because it is this. You're not going to get that on Amazon. You're not going to get that off, buying something on Instagram. You ain't going to get it on your, store shelf down the street. But we offer that to people. So, I think we can do a better job. And I think the world is kind of primed, in wanting those invitations. So I agree.
So let's move into number 9, kind of this decision around virtual versus in person. Is it an and or is it an or?
I think we all know the answer to that. It's interesting. I said earlier, like pandemic was an accelerator. It was. I'm sure there's things that came out of it that wouldn't have come before, but I think for most things, what it did is it created an acceleration period of things that were already on a trajectory, right? So social selling prior to pandemic in our space, that was already the thing. People were already realizing they could be so much more efficient, extending reach, right? Building audience, using social media, using content, using tools today. It allows us and our community to reach more people more effectively than we've ever been able to do in the history of mankind, right? Or humankind. So piggybacking that virtual through pandemic, we got forced, right, to see the value. And I think we learned that take social media, things like Zoom. The advancements in technology that allow us to be face-to-face and video right from our phones all day long. Now into a pandemic period where we got forced to only use those tools, I think we all learned that they're effective. They're effective. Yeah. I come from the space where I first got started as a distributor. I used to drive my car city to city to city every week around California to go sit in meetings to deliver information. During my momentum phase, getting on a plane every week. I spent every week on a plane, city to city to city to city, flying around to deliver information. And now we can just do it from a Zoom. You can deliver information, right? Your presentation, your product information, education, people will receive all of this virtually. It's now accepted. And I think we've gotten so attuned to it, we'd rather have it. Why would I fly somewhere, drive somewhere, be somewhere, spend some time away from my family, my kids, my hobbies, my passions for something you can give to me in 5-10 minutes over a Zoom, or in this example right here, right? And, an extended period in an audio, right? So the virtual adds value. And yes, let's not be naive and think everything can be done virtually. I think it's an and, right? I think the virtual can extend reach, build audience, deliver information and education. And that allows us to now create more space when we do get together to spend time on things that maybe you can't get as effectively over Zoom, where it's about deepening the connection. It's about creating an experience you couldn't have. It's about feeling. It's about feeling an emotion, right, that you couldn't maybe get or transfer over a Zoom. I think our in-person strategy, it's much more about that feeling and that experience, that relationship, than it is about delivering information education. I think the days of sitting in a hotel room from ain't to faint for 4 straight days, getting information overload, like people, it's like, why? Let's go create an experience and do something we haven't done. And that experience without a hotel room is going to create more bonds and moments and memories and strength of our community that's going to fill people up to explode the conversation more than 4 days in a hotel room. Don't misunderstand me. We still need to deliver information education, but I think the in-person higher value is on creating a feeling, an emotional connection, and experience. Think about virtual as the reach, right? But in person as the depth, right, of emotional connection. And I think that's super exciting for all of us. We get those things. We get to have more fun when we're together, and we get to reach more people on our day-to-day. I think it's a perfect timing.
Absolutely. I think that was explained so well. Each of these are different tools in the toolbox that when we deploy them appropriately and in the right way, they can have a really huge impact. So Blake, help us move into the last one here.
Last one. So last one I think is worth highlighting. I'm not a big believer in news media and rhetoric. I actually don't listen to any of it. I try to put my energy into things I can control, and I'm not perfect at keeping away things I can't control. So the recessionary conversation, right, I know is a dialogue. We'd be naive not to at least adapt if that's going to be the conversation in mainstream media. And if we are going into a recessionary time, I told you my story at the beginning. I have a positive lens on a recessionary season. My biggest momentum phase that I experienced, my first, was out of a recessionary season. So there's opportunity. Recession creates more need. Another word for need is demand. You guys, business is all about meeting demands. The bigger the need and demand, the bigger the opportunity, the bigger the impact. But here's the but. You got to make sure you tailor your message and what you're doing to a recessionary time. You got to ask, what is the recessionary consumer going to be looking for? What do they need, right? What do our promoters need? And how might we adapt or adjust to a climate that we're going into? But I feel if we do that, I feel like we can go through an acceleration period. And Wayne, you know this, like this industry, this channel generally accelerates in general through a recessionary period. So if you get the lift that we generally get, but you add a little strategic insight to your conversation, I think this can be a very exciting time for our whole channel and the brands that are listening.
You made a really important point when we started and on that live stream, that these aren't changes that are coming down the pike, that these are happening now. We're living these changes. We're not waiting for them anymore. Can you talk a little bit about kind of where we're at, who we should kind of go to, kind of that idea around being close to the fire, and then kind of in closing, where you see this opportunity for us?
Yeah. And I'm going to reiterate, because I want to just be mindful of how this conversation comes across. I hope it comes across with some energy and passion, because I'm passionate about it. But I also want you to know, guys, I'm in it with all of you listening. Like, I'm a student, right? Wayne, you're a student. And all we're doing in this conversation is just collecting and having a conversation on things we're seeing, things we're feeling, things we're hearing, kind of plugged in and translating it, hopefully to add value to you, your community, what you're doing. So I hope you receive it in the spirit that it's intended. By no means do I have all the answers. Like, we gave you a list of 10. This isn't the only 10. I'm sure there's a lot longer list. They weren't in any order or priority, so don't take them as such. But I do know, based on the experience I shared at the beginning, that these are here. They're here. This isn't what's to come. It's here. This is happening now, right? This isn't a futurist conversation. This isn't a crystal ball. This is a mirror reflecting on what we are all living and going through in this moment right now. And again, the point of us doing this and taking time away from our day to day is just to try to better everyone listening in the communities you lead and align, right, us as a group of companies, right, all at the end of the day with the same outcome to better people and better the world in a way that can win, right, in a way that can win. And the opposite of that, because if you don't, you might not be here, right? You might not be here. Blockbuster thought they'd be here forever. Blockbuster, the owners turned down. They sent the CEOs, the founders of Netflix, out of their offices multiple times when they went knocking. You don't know it's coming unless you open your ears. The good news is I'll give you good news, and I'll give you better news. So the good news is you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to ask questions, right? Us as companies, as brand leaders, you don't have to have all the answers. Don't be a leader that thinks you have to have all the answers. Just be the leader that knows how to ask the right questions. So I would listen to this conversation and re-listen to it if you need to re-listen to it and kind of go through the things we touched on. We touched on a lot, and we appreciate the time, but just frame it into questions, right? So I would ask, like, what is your omnichannel strategy? How can you position your community and brand right now across multiple channels in a way that's in alignment with your community so it's a win-win? Ask yourself that question. If you haven't started with Amazon, start there. It's the easiest and obvious, and you can have it up and running in weeks if you have the right team. Watch the video. But ask yourself the question, because that's where we're going. And if you ask yourself the question, you'll start to find the answers. How can you elevate the value of the products that we're bringing to the world? And how can we align the expectation and be more real in our delivery? If you ask yourself the question, you're gonna start to find the answers. It's a strategic framework, right? We're not giving you the answers here. Everybody listening has different products, different brands, different outcomes, different communities. You know that better than we ever could, but we can give you a nudge to ask the right question to give yourself the answer. How do you speed up your innovation velocity? What can you do monthly or seasonally or weekly, like Red Aspen, right? What is the right innovation velocity for you, and how do you move in that direction? Ask yourself the question. How do we elevate our consumer experience? Are we consumer obsessed, right? Who do we have to bring on? How do we have to shift our thinking? How do we, focus on that? How do we become the platform? How do we not run away or be fearful of the leadership, power, and potential, but how do we recognize that's the gift and the power that can bring our company to a new level? And how do we elevate them and work in alignment with them and provide them the culture to grow? How do we become the record label, the Jay-Z, and go find our next Eminem and 50 Cent? They're out there. They're probably in your community. How do we make sure personal activity is rewarded? How do we lead a little more heart-centered? How do we make people feel, right, a little bit more? And not fake. People see right through that, real. If you're listening to this, you genuinely care. You wouldn't be spending the time listening unless you genuinely cared and wanted better. Show people that, right? And how do you create an environment that allows people to feel that, right? How do we elevate the currency of our community? Because our communities are what separate us. These are the questions. How do we tailor our virtual so that when we're together in person, we can have depth of connection, depth of feeling, and depth of experience? What does that look like for your business? And if we are going into a recession, I don't know if we are or not, but it's the language being used in the media, so it's going to create a narrative. So how do we adapt, right? How do we align our marketing message to what people think they're going to need so we can accelerate during this time? So guys, today's conversation isn't meant to give all the answers. It's meant just to be candid observations of what we're seeing and feeling, boots on the ground, with some gray hair and some wisdom behind the lens. But it's to prompt you to ask your own questions. For your own strategic direction to start creating the shifts. And you don't need all of them. What's the one? Where are you going to start? And then Wayne, I'll close out with the better answer. I said there's a good and there was better. Here's the better, right? The good, you don't have to have the answers, just ask the questions. Here's the better thing. The answers are already there. They're just not in your boardroom. The answers to your questions you're going to ask already exist. May not just be coming from the people you're talking to every day. I have been around long enough to know that there are people in your community right now close to the fire, your field, your people having conversations every day, the people that are out there rapid testing through their social media content and posts, getting instant real-time feedback on where the world's at. They are on the front line in the fire. They are on the bleeding edge of every disruption we talked about. They know it. They feel it. They're leading it. They have the answers. The pieces of your puzzle are already out there on the table. You just got to go find the people who has the piece. Listen, ask, elevate, engage and empower. Like we said, engage and empower the community, and you'll find the answers to your questions of where disruption is at today, what's really happening. And I know everybody listening, you guys are all smart enough. You care enough. You got great teams around you. You got amazing resources that if you just get the input, you can make the strategic decisions and the shifts that allow you not to be the obsolete. You will be the Netflix, right? You will be the Tesla. You will be the Amazon in the category that we're in. And we as a channel, whatever we decide to eventually call ourselves, can emerge right in this omnichannel world and get highlighted for the value we really bring to people's lives every day, beyond the amazing products and beyond the financial opportunity, but what we do for people. So,
Blake,
Wayne, that's my hope,
yes,
brother. And hopefully today's conversation inspires that. Absolutely.
Blake, this has been so insightful, so inspiring. Thank you for taking us through these 10 disruptions, these 10 shifts. These are amazing questions to ask ourselves. They're amazing opportunities for all of us to really stand out, to provide value, to differentiate. Thanks for helping us really think hard on this, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you, Wayne. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you for tuning in. We invite you to subscribe so that you are the first to know when new episodes are available. And a reminder to register today at dsu2023.com to join your peers in person for the annual DSN Global Celebration and DSU events taking place Tuesday, April 18th through Thursday, April 20th, 2023 in Frisco, Texas. Thank you for listening and supporting DSN and the Direct Approach podcast.